It was 3 a.m. The world outside was silent, except for the low hum of a moving truck parked by the gate. Claire stood by the window, staring at the dark lake that used to sparkle with laughter and family memories. Her brother Ethan's SUV was still by the dock. He was asleep inside the house, unaware of what was about to happen. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held her phone, the screen glowing against the shadows. The online form was open. All she needed to do was click confirm sale. He said it was just for a few weeks, she whispered to herself. But that was 6 months ago. She looked around the living room, the same place their parents had celebrated birthdays, Christmases, and quiet Sunday mornings. Now it didn't look like home anymore. The walls were painted a dull beige, the curtains replaced with Mara's bright floral ones. Even the smell was different, air freshener instead of pine wood and her mother's lavender soap. She could still see it, Mara laughing as she redecorated their mother's kitchen, saying, "It needs a woman's touch." Their kids had run around carelessly, breaking one of her late father's fishing rods. Ethan had just shrugged. "They're just kids," he'd said, not caring that it was one of the few things their father left behind. For months, Claire had watched everything change, watched her brother slowly take over the house, the way he always had taken over everything. He called it family property, like her name on the papers meant nothing. He never asked. He just moved in, bringing noise, chaos, and a strange sense of entitlement. But this house wasn't just a building to her. It was her parents' last gift, their memory, their love, their legacy. It was where she came after her engagement ended, where she sat alone by the water to heal. Now, even that peace had been stolen. Claire's eyes filled with quiet anger as she looked out the window again. The moving truck driver waited patiently, engine running. The cold air seeped through the glass, but her heart was colder. She opened her laptop. The sale documents glowed on the screen, clean, final, and irreversible. Her cursor hovered over the button. For a moment, she hesitated. The house creaked softly, as if the walls themselves were asking her not to do it. But then she remembered Ethan's smirk, the way he told her to lighten up, the way Mara had said, "You're lucky we even let you stay here." Her jaw tightened. She clicked confirm sale. The sound of the mouse click echoed through the empty living room, louder than it should have been, sharp and final. Claire closed her eyes and whispered, "They took everything from me, so I took back what was mine." Claire was a hard-working single woman who lived a quiet life. She spent most of her days managing a small design business from home, keeping herself busy to avoid the silence that often filled her evenings. After her engagement ended 2 years ago, she had stopped hoping for much. The lake house, her parents' old home, had become her safe place, the one thing that gave her comfort when everything else fell apart. She cared for the house like a living thing. Every morning, she would sweep the porch, polish her father's old fishing trophies, and water her mother's rose bushes. It wasn't just a house to her. It was a memory, a promise, a piece of the family she lost too soon. Her brother Ethan was the opposite of her in every way. He was charming, talkative, and always seemed to get what he wanted without much effort. Growing up, their parents adored him. "Ethan has such big dreams," their mother would say, smiling proudly. And Claire, quiet and dependable, would just nod, pretending it didn't hurt. Ethan made a lot of mistakes in his adult life, bad investments, poor choices, and a failed business. When he went bankrupt, he blamed the economy and everyone else but himself. Yet somehow, he always found a way to make others feel sorry for him. Claire, on the other hand, earned everything she had. She never asked for help. When their mother passed away 5 years ago, Claire took care of the funeral arrangements while Ethan arrived 2 days late, talking about important meetings. After their parents died, the will was simple. The lake house was left to both of them to share. Claire thought it was fair. But soon, she realized that sharing meant something very different to Ethan. He never helped pay the property taxes or the repairs. Every time Claire called or sent him a message about expenses, he either ignored her or made excuses. So year after year, she paid everything on her own. Then one day, Ethan called. His voice was unusually soft. "Claire, I just need a place to stay for a month," he said. "Mara and I are having some trouble with the bank." She hesitated, but her heart was too kind. "Just a month," she agreed. That was the biggest mistake she ever made. Within weeks, Ethan's wife, Mara, started rearranging everything. She painted over their mother's favorite wall color. changed the curtains, and threw out Claire's old decorations. "This place needs a woman's touch," she said with a smirk, as if Claire wasn't standing right there. Their 2 children took over Claire's room, and she moved her things into the smaller guest room. She didn't want to argue. She thought being patient would make things easier. But every day, she felt like she was fading from her own home. Ethan began to call the house our family home, saying it so casually that it made her stomach twist. When guests came over, he introduced himself as the homeowner. Mara laughed about how Aunt Claire didn't have her own family yet. Their words stung, but Claire stayed silent, swallowing her pride and pretending she didn't care. Months passed. The house was no longer quiet or peaceful. There were toys scattered on the floor, dishes piled up in the sink, and loud arguments between Ethan and Mara that echoed through the hallways. Claire often sat by the lake at night, staring at the reflection of the moon in the water. She wondered how her life had come to this, how the one place that was supposed to bring her peace now made her feel invisible. Then came the night that changed everything. Ethan decided to host a barbecue for his friends and neighbors. He didn't ask Claire, he just announced it. The smell of grilled meat and loud laughter filled the yard. Claire stood by the window, watching the crowd take over the space she once called home. Ethan raised his glass in front of everyone and said with a proud smile, "Here's to new beginnings, and to our beautiful home by the lake." Everyone cheered. Claire froze. "Our home." The words cut through her like a blade. She stood there, holding a plate she had brought out for guests, her face pale, her heart heavy. In that moment, she realized something. She was no longer a guest in her own house. She was a ghost, standing in the ruins of what used to be her life. That night, when the laughter faded and the lights went out, Claire sat alone on the porch, her eyes filled with quiet tears. She didn't say it out loud, but a decision was already forming in her heart. Something had to change, and it would. After the barbecue, the yard was quiet again. Empty plates and paper cups were scattered everywhere, and the smell of smoke still hung in the air. Claire stood near the porch, her arms crossed, watching Ethan laugh with Mara as they cleaned up. She finally walked up to him and said, her voice trembling a little, "You're crossing the line, Ethan. This isn't just your house. You can't keep doing this." Ethan looked at her, smirked, and shook his head. "Oh, Claire, don't start this again. You're too emotional. It was just a small get-together. Lighten up." Her jaw tightened. "You introduced yourself as the homeowner." He shrugged. "It's just words. Don't be so dramatic." Claire turned away, her eyes stinging. She went to her room, shut the door, and tried to calm herself. But deep down, something inside her snapped. The next morning, she woke up early and went outside to sit by the dock, hoping for a quiet moment. But when she got there, her heart dropped. Her father's old fishing boat was gone, the one he had built with his own hands. She ran back to the house and found Ethan pouring coffee. "Where's Dad's boat?" she asked sharply. He didn't even look up. "Oh, that. I loaned it to a friend for the weekend. He needed it." Claire's voice rose. "You what? That boat was Dad's. You had no right." Ethan interrupted her, rolling his eyes. "Claire, calm down. It's just a boat. You always make a big deal out of nothing." She stared at him in disbelief. "You never ask. You just take and take. Do you even hear yourself?" He sighed dramatically and set his mug down. "Mom wanted us to share everything. You're acting like this place belongs only to you. You can't control everything, Claire." The words hit her like a slap. That was what he always did. Twist her love for their parents and make her feel guilty for standing up for herself. Claire left the kitchen before she said something she'd regret. She spent the rest of the day cleaning quietly, avoiding everyone. But that night, as she passed the hallway to her room, she heard voices from Ethan and Mara's bedroom. She froze. Mara's voice was sharp. "We can't keep living like this. She's never going to leave." Ethan's reply was calm, almost smug. "I know. But once we fix this place up, she won't have a reason to kick us out. She's too soft. She'll give up eventually." Claire's stomach turned. Her hands started shaking. She backed away slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. When she reached her car outside, she sat behind the wheel, breathing hard. Her whole body trembled, from anger, from hurt, from years of being dismissed. She opened the glove compartment and pulled out the old folder that held the property papers. Under the dim light of the dashboard, she flipped through them carefully. Then she saw it, her name, and only her name, on the title. Ethan had never finished transferring his share. For years, she had believed they were co-owners. For years, she'd carried the guilt, the burden, the silence. But now, the truth stared right at her. Legally, the lake house was hers. Entirely hers. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't from sadness this time. They were from relief and anger mixed together. She thought about all the times Ethan had called her too emotional. About Mara's cruel jokes. About her father's boat, her mother's kitchen, her lost peace. She closed the folder slowly and looked out toward the dark lake. The moonlight shimmered on the water, soft and cold. She whispered to herself, "No more." That night, Claire made a decision. She wasn't going to fight, argue, or beg anymore. She would do what she should have done long ago. She picked up her phone, opened her laptop, and searched for a real estate agent. Her hand didn't shake this time as she typed the message. She was done being the quiet sister. She was done being erased. She was going to sell the house. Claire began preparing for the sale quietly. She didn't tell anyone, not even her closest friend. Every morning, after Ethan left for work and Mara took the kids to school, she made small calls, met with the real estate agent, and packed her parents' old things one box at a time. The agent, a kind woman named Mrs. Lewis, visited one afternoon to take a look around. After walking through the house and checking the papers, she nodded. "Everything looks good, Claire. But once we list it, you'll have to give notice. They'll need to move out before the sale is complete." Claire froze for a moment. "Notice?" she repeated quietly. "Yes," Mrs. Lewis said gently. "I know it's difficult, but you'll have to tell them." Claire looked around the house. The sound of the children's laughter in the distance, their toys scattered across the floor, the family photos on the wall. For a second, guilt washed over her. It wasn't the kids' fault. They were innocent. But the pain of watching her parents' home being taken over, the way Ethan and Mara treated her like she didn't belong, it was too much to bear. "I'll handle it," she finally said. But handling it wasn't easy. Over the next few days, Ethan's behavior grew strange. He became more controlling, more watchful. One evening, when Claire came home from the grocery store, her key didn't work. She tried again, confused, until Ethan opened the door. "Oh, I changed the locks," he said casually. Mara didn't feel safe with strangers coming around lately. "Strangers?" Claire asked, her voice shaking. "This is my house too." Ethan crossed his arms. "Really? You've been acting odd lately. Sneaking around, whispering on the phone. Mara thinks you're stressed out. Maybe you should take a break, visit a friend for a while." Claire could hardly breathe. He was trying to push her out, gaslight her, make her think she was the problem. She forced a small smile. "I'm fine," she said and walked past him. That night, while cleaning the hallway shelf, she noticed something that made her stop. There was a framed photo she had always kept there. Her parents smiling in front of the lake. But now, that photo was gone. In its place was a picture of Ethan, Mara, and their kids, standing in the same spot by the water. Her throat tightened. She touched the empty space where her parents' photo used to be. It hit her then. They weren't just taking over the house. They were erasing her completely. Later that week, Ethan called for another family dinner. Claire sat across the table in silence while Ethan poured wine and smiled proudly. "Here's to new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. "To family and the beautiful future ahead." Everyone clapped. Mara smiled at him lovingly. The kids laughed. Claire didn't move. She just stared at her plate. Every word felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. New beginnings. That was all she ever wanted for herself. But somehow Ethan had stolen even that phrase. That night, when the house went quiet, Claire went to her parents' old room. She opened their drawers, touching her mother's jewelry box, her father's fishing hat. The memories came flooding back. Her mother humming softly while folding laundry. Her father calling her "my little helper." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out a piece of paper. She began writing a letter to her late mother. "Mom," she wrote, her hand shaking slightly. "I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. I know this house meant everything to you and Dad, but I can't keep letting them take what's left of you, of us. I tried to share. I tried to be kind. But they don't see me, Mom. They never did. Please forgive me." When she finished, she folded the note carefully and placed it inside her mother's jewelry box. The next morning, while Ethan and Mara were out, Claire met Mrs. Lewis again. They discussed final details, the listing, the notice, the expected buyers. Everything was ready. But fate wasn't done testing her yet. That afternoon, as Claire stood by the driveway, quietly talking with Mrs. Lewis, Mara suddenly appeared. Her eyes narrowed, sharp as glass. "What's going on here?" she demanded. Mrs. Lewis smiled politely. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm just..." But Mara cut her off. "You're a realtor, aren't you? Claire, what are you doing? You wouldn't dare sell this house." Claire stayed calm, though her heart was pounding. Mara stepped closer, her voice rising. "You can't do this. Ethan will ruin you if you try. We have rights." Claire didn't answer. She just looked at Mara, steady, quiet, unshaken. After a long silence, Mara scoffed. "You're going to regret this," she hissed before storming back inside. Mrs. Lewis glanced at Claire nervously. "Do you want to delay the sale?" Claire shook her head. Her voice was calm but firm. "No. Let's go ahead. The papers are already signed." When the realtor left, Claire stood in the driveway, watching the sunlight shimmer on the lake. The wind brushed her hair gently. For the first time in months, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. She knew what she was about to do would break the family apart, but she also knew it was the only way to save herself. Ethan could call her emotional, unstable, even cruel. But deep inside, she understood the truth. This wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. And as the evening light faded, Claire whispered softly to the quiet lake, "It's time." Ethan woke up to the sound of loud knocking at the door. It was early morning, and the sun had just started to rise. Still half asleep, he walked to the door, rubbing his eyes. When he opened it, a man and woman stood there, holding clipboards and smiling politely. "Good morning," the man said. "We're here for the inspection. We spoke to the owner, Claire." Ethan frowned. "Inspection? What are you talking about?" Before they could answer, Mara came down the stairs in her robe, her hair messy. "Who are these people?" she asked sharply. The man smiled again, a little nervous now. "We're the new owners. We're just here to look around before the move-in date." For a moment, the house went silent. Then Mara's face turned red. "New owners? Move-in date? What do you mean?" Ethan turned pale. "There must be some mistake," he said quickly. "This house isn't for sale." That's when Claire appeared on the porch, standing behind the buyers. She looked calm, almost too calm, her hands folded in front of her. "There's no mistake," she said softly. "The sale went through last week." Mara's voice broke into a scream. "You sold the house? Are you insane?" The children, hearing the noise, ran down the stairs crying, asking what was happening. Ethan's face twisted with anger. He stormed toward Claire. "You can't do this. You had no right." Claire didn't move. "It was never yours to take, Ethan." Ethan's voice rose. "This is our family home." "No," she said firmly. "It's my parents' home. And I paid for every year you ignored it." The buyers stood awkwardly at the edge of the porch, unsure what to do. Ethan turned to them and shouted, "Get out. You're not buying anything here." The man quickly pulled out his phone. "Ma'am, should we call security?" he whispered to Claire. "Yes," Claire said quietly. When Ethan realized she wasn't backing down, his anger turned wild. "How could you do this to your own brother? After everything we've been through?" Claire looked at him, her voice steady but full of pain. "Everything I've been through, you mean? I paid every tax, every repair, every bill. You ignored every message. You lost your house, Ethan. You don't get to take mine too." For a moment, Ethan's anger faltered. His eyes softened, confused. "Claire, we're family," he said, his voice breaking. "You can't just throw us out." Claire took a deep breath. Memories flashed in her mind, her mother's gentle voice saying, "Take care of your brother," her father's hand on Ethan's shoulder, proud smiles that never turned her way. She remembered the birthdays she spent alone, the nights she cried in silence while Ethan laughed and charmed everyone. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but sharp. "Then you should have acted like family, Ethan." Mara stood behind him, shaking her head in disbelief. "You're cruel," she hissed. "Heartless. You'll regret this." Claire looked at her calmly. "I already have. Every day for years." The sound of a car pulling up broke the tension. 2 security officers stepped out. Ethan tried to argue with them, but they had already received the notice. They were there to escort the family off the property. As they began to pack their things in chaos, Ethan turned to Claire one last time. His voice cracked. Why, Claire? Why would you do this? She looked down for a moment, then back at him with tears in her eyes. Because you left me no choice. He shook his head, defeated. You always wanted to hurt me. No, she said softly. I wanted peace. Ethan paused, staring at her with confusion. Peace. Claire nodded. I didn't sell this house just for me. I made sure part of the payment goes to clear your debts. The ones that ruined you in the first place. Ethan blinked, speechless. You what? I know you wouldn't have survived another collapse, she said. I wanted you free, but not here. Not in this house. For the first time, Ethan had nothing to say. His anger melted into shame. He looked around the house. Their parents' photo still missing, Mara packing in tears, his children clinging to her, and realized what he had done. Claire turned away, her voice trembling. Goodbye, Ethan. He tried to speak, but no words came out. All he could do was watch her walk toward the lake, the wind lifting her hair as she stood by the water. The same place their father once taught them to fish. As the security officers guided Ethan and his family out, the buyers stepped closer to the house, quietly starting their inspection. The chaos faded behind her. Claire closed her eyes, feeling the soft breeze from the lake on her face. The house was no longer hers to protect, but neither was it his to destroy. The sale wasn't revenge. It was freedom. And as the last moving truck drove away, she whispered to herself, it's over. The family moved out a few days later. The house that had been full of noise, arguments, and children's laughter was now silent. The floors creaked under Claire's feet as she walked through the empty rooms. Every sound echoed, the closing of a door, the soft rustle of a curtain, like the house itself was taking one last breath. Boxes were gone, furniture was gone, and so were the voices that had filled the place for months. For the first time in a long time, Claire could hear the quiet, and it didn't hurt. It felt like peace. She walked out to the dock where the lake shimmered under the afternoon sun. In her hand, she held her mother's old locket, the one she used to wear every Sunday. Claire opened it gently and looked at the tiny photo inside, her parents smiling back at her. I did it, Mom, she whispered. I finally let go. The wind brushed across the water, soft and cool. She took a deep breath and smiled faintly. Forgiveness doesn't always mean letting them stay, she said quietly to herself. Sometimes it means walking away. Later that evening, as she sat in her small apartment, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. I hope one day you understand, it read. Claire stared at the message for a long moment. There was a time she would have replied, explained herself, apologized, tried to fix things again. But now, she simply turned off the phone and placed it face down. She didn't need to explain anything anymore. With the money from the sale, Claire made a choice that surprised even herself. She rented a small office in town and began setting up a therapy and wellness space, a place for people like her, those who had lost their voices in other people's chaos. She worked hard every day, decorating the rooms with soft colors, flowers, and warm lights. Slowly, clients began to come, women and men trying to rebuild their lives after being controlled, dismissed, or forgotten. Claire listened to their stories, offered support, and reminded them that it was never too late to take back control. Every time she helped someone find their strength, she felt her own grow stronger too. Months passed. The lake house was no longer hers, but one afternoon, she drove by out of curiosity. A new family was living there now. A couple sitting on the porch, their little boy chasing a dog across the yard. She parked for a moment and watched them. The boy's laughter echoed across the water. And for the first time in a long time, Claire smiled, a real, peaceful smile. She wasn't angry anymore. The house was where it belonged, with people who would make new memories. She had done the right thing. As she drove away, the sun set behind the trees, painting the sky with gold and orange light. Claire felt light, free, and certain of who she was. She was no longer the quiet sister who let life happen to her. She was her own person now, strong, calm, and finally at peace. Some homes aren't meant to be kept, they're meant to teach you when to let go. Claire's voice was calm as she whispered the words to herself. The car moved slowly down the quiet road that curved around the lake. The evening sun glowed softly on the water, painting everything in gold. The lake was still, peaceful, almost like it was reflecting her heart. calm after a long, painful storm. She glanced at the house one last time as she drove past. From the road, it looked warm and alive again. Children's laughter floated faintly through the air, and smoke rose from the chimney. Someone else's life was beginning there now. A new chapter, free from the old wounds. Claire smiled gently. She didn't feel bitterness anymore. The memories would always be a part of her. The love, the hurt, the lessons. But they didn't control her now. She had found peace, not in holding on, but in letting go. As the house disappeared behind the trees, she turned her eyes forward. The open road stretched ahead, quiet and full of promise. Her hands relaxed on the steering wheel. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from anything. She was driving toward something new. Her own life, her own freedom, her own peace. The sun sank lower, touching the edge of the lake. The light shimmered across the water, bright and soft. Claire took a deep breath and smiled. He took the home, she said softly. But I took back my life. Busties. Two Hearts, thank you so much for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories. See you in the next one. Bye. Waving Hand Sparkles.